It's the 25th of July 2020 and we're watching Hurricane Douglas approaching the Hawaiian Islands, and it looks like it is going to approach the islands, and definitely think we're going to be looking at some interesting topographic interactions in this region. Douglas is currently estimated to have winds of 95 knots. That's 110 miles per hour. It is significantly weaker than it was yesterday, or actually in this image it was the 23rd of July. That is 2 days ago Hawaii time. The weakening has occurred because it's moved over sub 26 Celsius waters now, so they're relatively cool, but it is not suffering from wind shear. With the storm forecast to be a weak hurricane as it approaches or passes over the Hawaiian Islands, hurricane watches and tropical storm warnings have been issued. With a track this close to the Big Island of Hawaii, with its 4,000 meter high two mountains and Haleakala, I would expect significant topographic effects to occur with this storm. The reason for this is a bit complicated, and I'm not going to try to explain everything right now, but it is a subject that I've looked into in some depth and have studied. The steering flow is what guides the hurricane to move, as well as the beta effect. And this image shows the effect of steering caused by the Big Island of Hawaii on a hurricane. So it shows that to the northeast of the Big Island, the island's effect under environmental trade wind type conditions is to push the hurricane very gently to the north, and then to the south down to the southeast. Now up here we've got values that are in 0.4 meters per second to about 1 meters per second closer to the island. 1 meters per second corresponds to 2 knots, and 0.5, let's say, is more like 1 knot. So these aren't large values, but the storm is moving at around 16 knots. So the effect is, in theory, to nudge the storm gradually over time by a few knots or a knot just northward. However, of course, there are much bigger potential things going on here, because as you can see, it actually goes white here. This is because you cannot move air through rock. So you cannot move air through solid rock. So the steering calculation cannot be calculated here, because it is a huge area that is above the lower level needed for the steering calculation. Suffice to say that a storm moving to the northeast of the Big Island is expected to be affected by the island in a sense that it is nudged a little bit northeast. The other thing to note is that this area is actually convergent influence, because the influence goes from being strong to being weaker. That is convergent. Now, the current track of Douglas has it going to the northeast of the Big Island, so perhaps this nudging will occur, but this case looks disturbingly similar to a case in 2000, which was Daniel. But Daniel was a bit weaker. Now, Daniel was forecast to track directly across the islands, including Oahu, as a tropical storm. However, this is what happened. It went to the northeast of the Big Island. It jumped northward in a couple of jumps. It actually intensified for a period and reformed into a Category 1 hurricane. And then it proceeded to miss all the islands as it passed to the northeast by a long margin. So what does this all mean for Hurricane Douglas? I don't know the answer to that question. Douglas is tracking into the same area as Daniel, but it is going to be stronger, and the shear is less. It is less disruptive. Daniel did not look even this good, which is not great. So in this region, this is going to be very interesting to watch, to see if we see any jumps to the north that we saw with Daniel, because those would be, if that occurs, it would be strongly suggestive of a terrain influence. but it's also moving faster, which might mean the terrain influence is less. The terrain influence is going to be greater for a slower moving hurricane because remember, it's just a few knots that is constantly occurring. So it's going to be nudging for a longer, if it's going slower, it nudges for a longer period. And there are examples from the past of some really extreme tracks in this region. However, I don't know what's going to happen here, and I'm going to be excited to watch it, and I hope you will be too. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, then you may find other videos on this channel of interest. Hitting the like button and subscribing really helps to support this channel. To get the latest videos, don't forget to enable all notifications.